Okay, so the AWS4 signature is a signing key which is used for most HTTP requests to AWS. What I am going to talk about in this video itself is more so for personal use, maybe even educational purposes, or maybe even information based. Because I do have another video which uses a faster, more simpler item. It is a GitHub repository pushed out by AWS Labs themselves, which basically makes it a lot easier to do AWS4 signature signing. I'd recommend you watch that if you want a faster implementation of the AWS4 signature. May require a little bit more knowledge about Maven, dependencies, stuff around that nature. Nothing crazy, but this video in itself is more so about, hey, if I didn't have any dependencies and I just wanted to create the AWS4 signature, as they say, because they give you examples on how you can do it yourself, and it's fairly straightforward. But it's anytime you're doing signing, it's kind of annoying because you can make one mistake and that will bleed into the other options, and just make things hard on their own. So the point being here, this is more of a kind of avenue you could use for an AWS4 signature, but it's not the best. And the reason why I say this is because about 5 months ago, I wrote my own AWS4 signer. It was really annoying. It took a while. It took like 3 or 4 days. I did not know at the time that there was another dependency or library I could have used. So keep in mind, the reason why I did this really was because I wanted to use AWS4 signer with my own client. I think I was using Rest Assured. And I did not want to use some type of API, because AWS does have APIs and different items that will do the signing for you, but I wanted just a signature. So if you want an example of what I'm talking about, hopefully this sounds somewhat familiar to you. If not, then you might have to research some things before you dive into this. But you send an HTTP request, and as you can see here, I'm just using a dummy example of Google.com. If you know anything about TCP and HTTP requests, not TCP, but HTTP. You have to send your headers, and the most important and most annoying thing that you are going to be doing is making the AWS4 signature itself, which is this right here. This is the signature. This is a dummy signature that Postman makes. They have their own, way of making the signature. It does work. I've used it with AWS. But this is just simply to show you the example of this is what the headers look like. This is what you need in order to communicate with AWS. So, for example, you will have your access key and you will have your secret key, and those two, along with some other things, will create the signature itself. So, as you can see here, this is something that if you were to implement this yourself, this is probably what your function would look like. Takes in the secret key, takes in a simple date format, your HTTP method, all these different things that will then be internalized and used with the AWS4 signer. I also recommend you read the actual AWS documentation. It's pretty good for information's sake. For example, like service name, you have to have a service name, but what if you don't have a service name? I'm pretty sure you can use null or empty string. Same thing for payload. As you can see, I have empty string for payload, and I think that's for GET requests. You can do that. So it's just a couple of things, and as you can see here, I wrote it myself, pretty much just following the AWS tutorial. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good learning experience. It's definitely not the most convenient item. It's definitely not the most it's not succinct. It's very verbose. But I liked it. It was pretty cool. It was a good learning experience. As you can see here, this is pretty much, what they propose, but I definitely would recommend, I'll put this in the description, this link right here. It is a Java query, forum post, website post, whatever it is, written by Vicky Thakor. Really, 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 really good. If you wanted to, you could actually take this right here, this entire piece of code, and paste it into your IDE of choice, and it would work. It would actually work. It would be, a good learning experience and something that you could use. So if you want to, and you say, hey, you know what, I'm lazy, I just want to, really quick, just do some AWS requests. I'll learn about making it myself later. If you want to learn about making it later, you can go ahead, copy this, use it for validation purposes, because like I said, there's a lot of, hashing algorithms and stuff where you can make a mistake. I definitely made a mistake. I made multiple posts online fixing those mistakes, and basically just figure out that, you know, what you're doing may be wrong and how to do it right. So I definitely would recommend you check this out. This is a really good resource just to understand the AWS4 signature, as well as, you know, a good example. You can run this. You could see what the signature is supposed to be. I believe AWS also offers a signature validator. I'm not, if I remember correctly, I think they do. If not, you could use this as a validator. And then this is like a little test class showing how he sets his stuff up and then runs it. And, you know, with this is with, I think, with Elasticsearch. But the reason why I even mention this, the reason why I even say this as something that is interesting, is that this is the pure signature. This is the signature, meaning anything you want to use, you could use. So it may give you some freedom. In the past, I used Rest Assured. Now, I'm not, you know, tied to Rest Assured. I don't love Rest Assured. I really could care less now. But at the time, I was using Rest Assured. So what I did was, with Rest Assured, they have a header method. I added the header with the signature and whatever headers I want, and boom, it worked. Convenient. You can use whatever client you want to use. If for some reason your application is using some client heavily and you need the signature, you want the signature, then you can do it. This is it. You can get the signature through this means. You write it yourself. You use it yourself. And like I said, I will include this URL because it's a really good resource just for validation purposes, just to make sure you're doing it correctly. But if you're not married to the client, if this is a learning experience or you just want to know what's the best way, for me personally, I was interested, what is the best way for making an HTTP request to AWS, just a basic HTTP request through the SDK? The answer would probably be, if you're not tied to a client, would be the AWS Request Interceptor, which is proposed by AWS Labs. It's not on Maven yet. I wish it was. And this is probably the easiest way, basically using Apache HTTP for put, post, get. But I'm planning on making a separate video about that. But either way, this is the kind of very amateur green, or even, you know, you could be professional if you really want to use your own implementation of getting the signature and then putting it to your HTTP request. You could do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just very verbose, and as you can see, the one I wrote like 5 months ago is pretty long, and it is, even just to initialize it, pretty annoying, and you have to have a lot of different variables, and you have to know what you want and what you're trying to do. And it is going to take a little bit of trial and error just to get everything up and running. But hopefully this video at least serves as some type of a point of information for the signature. And that URL I provided is pretty much, I wouldn't say exactly the same as me because I wrote this before I found that URL. I use that URL for validation. But it's very similar. It's literally what AWS proposes to. They have their own tutorial. It's all text-based, and it's a good resource itself. But I feel like if you're given an example to at least run in your IDE, you'll have a better chance of success and not getting frustrated when things don't work out. So links in the description for the URLs and stuff, and I'll also include the other YouTube video I'm planning on making with the request interceptor as well.